welcome our speakers. Kathryn Greenhill, author of the Librarians Matter blog. Kate Davis, lecturer in Library and Information Science at Queensland University of Technology. Jemima McDonald, Information Services Manager at the University of Technology, Sydney Library. Carolyn Gauld, at the Library E-Services Manager at QUT. And Francis Kneebone, who's an e-learning consultant from V2 Training. And I've just been speaking to Francis because it turns out I know his father. But when you have a name like Kneebone, it's probably not likely that you... it's more likely that you can figure out who your connections are with people. Whereas when your name's Wright, you could be just anybody. I think it's the fourth most common English surname in the English language. But as librarians, we're information professionals, and I'm convinced that our sector has become more important, not less, in this Google world. Whereas once we were gatekeepers of the written word, and I have often said this to the staff here, that we in libraries were quite passive in receiving the output of the publishing world. And what I see now are opportunities for us to move up the value chain and get much more involved with the production, the co-creation, the editorial side of the distribution of publishing, which doesn't have to be formal publishing, but it is a way of communication, both scholarly communication and popular communication. And in another sense, we are guides, navigators, pilots, critics, and advisors in a world of, some would say, overabundance of information. And I think probably librarians are the only ones who fully understand about provenance and authenticity. And we know how to assess the quality of the information we're looking at. We know how to trace back where the information's come from and to provide some advice about its veracity. We also understand that content's a two-way street and that library users increasingly want to create their own and contribute to the world of knowledge. And our commitment to equality of access has never been more important. And this is in a world where most people have access to the internet and to Google and what's online, but there's still a significant proportion of people, even in Australia, who have no access at all, who don't have a computer, have no digital literacy. Even if they don't have a computer, can't even go into a library and work out how to use a computer to get access to the online environment. Now, that online environment is about getting information for their life, their work, and also about contributing and participating in a digital economy, which we're increasingly becoming. And so the role of the public library is absolutely critical in supporting both developing the multiple literacies that we need for people to access the digital environment, but also to help those people who are probably never going to have those literacies and help them get the information they need and still participate in an environment that is going to be primarily digital. And, you know, the last few days we've had all the news about the Australian press and the Fairfax press and the other newspapers that are moving to a digital environment, and the predictions about when the print newspapers will die completely, moving from, 2030 to 2020 to 2015, so that the timeline for the printed newspaper being a thing of the past, a curiosity, is getting much closer. So are libraries irrelevant in a Google world? I don't think so. And I think it's going to be very interesting to hear the speakers this morning talk to us about the ways in which libraries and others are adapting to this digital environment. So I'm very pleased to welcome our first speaker this morning, Kathryn Greenhill, who's the author of the Librarians Matter blog.
Okay, Because I'm the first speaker, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure we're all on the same page so that these fine people who come behind me don't have to repeat some of the facts and figures and stats. So I've called it G is for Google, H is for Harry, and L is for library. That's me. I'm also Associate Lecturer at Curtin University in Perth. I don't just author a blog. I speak quickly. My blog, librariansmatter.com, I've got the slides and a recording of me saying maybe not even slower a lot of what I'm saying here, so take notes if you want. If you miss stuff, you can always go back to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with looking at what we mean by a Google world, a very thin sliver of it. Then I'm going to talk about Harry Potter. Then I'm going to very briefly look about the library world and how that might differ. And then I'm going to offer some so whats. Now, I usually over-prepare too much material. I did it this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the backgrounds to the worlds, and then I'm going to just jump straight to 10 ideas. And there's not necessarily going to be a logical progression. And when I looked at it, I thought, that doesn't actually matter. We've got a panel discussion afterwards, and if some of you are saying, you got rocks in your head, how did you get to there from there? I'm happy to explain then. Okay. What I'm going to start with, and I don't want anybody to call out, just keep it in your head, we're coming back to this, okay? What I did is I put into silly old Google who doesn't know anything, an image search for a particular term. See if you can work out what term it was. Don't say anything. Okay, we're coming back to that. Okay, so the Google world. And what I'm really talking about is changes to how people find information. And I've not put information online because actually stuff that was got offline via print is often retrieved now via online. So changes to how people get information. So when you think of Google, when you hear somebody say, I'm going to go to Google, do you think of this? Somebody going to the physical place. This is 31st of December last year. I had my friend Karen, when I was in California, drive me to the Google campus at Mountain View, and we stood there. The security guards were bemused. We took our photo and we ran away. I was so excited, you know, there was Google Wi-Fi, and I took a screenshot, and I even went past the little car. This is the Google car that you used to take. And this is what I really love. It's got a little bookmark there sitting next to the car. Okay, but when you think, I'm going to Google, do you think anybody thinks they're going to go and look at their car? Now, what we've got is we've got a situation when somebody says, I'm going to the library. They are talking about a physical place. And what we're trying to do is actually convince our users and ourselves that I'm going to Google and I'm going to the library as an online statement is the same thing. I don't think anybody thinks that. We have a gap. Do we need to fill it? What do we need to do with it? I don't know. I'm pointing out the gap. Okay, back to basics. Google's mission is to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Now, I was revising some notes. I teach an Introduction to Libraries course, and I was revising the notes, and I came across a term that I thought, yes, we used to talk about that when I was learning about library school. The term was bibliographic universe. Okay? The idea was that all the knowledge that we had could be contained in print. It was distributed across libraries throughout the world. It didn't matter that it was distributed across libraries throughout the world because we had universal access and control through our bibliographic control. Okay, as librarians, we were able to control this stuff. We were able to retrieve it if needed. Turns out, I think we're still thinking like that, although maybe in terms of getting the organisation of the world's information, it's maybe not our best business anymore. Okay, I'm going to very quickly go through Google's 10 things we know to be true, and I told you I was going back to the basics with Google. Think about whether they match library values and what we do. Some do, some don't. Okay, this is since 1995. Sergey Brin and Larry Page have used this to guide what Google's about. Focus on the user and all else will follow. It's best to do one thing really, really well. Fast is better than slow. Democracy on the web works. You don't need to be at your desk to need an answer. You can make money without doing evil. There's always more information out there, and the need for information crosses all borders. You can be serious without a suit, and great just isn't good enough. Okay, some of them I'd take on, some of them I'm at odds with. What I'm going to do, though, is this statement. It's best to do one thing really, really well. Google still make the statement that they're in the business of search. So the sliver that I'm going to look at today is search, okay? So I know that there's a Google Book Settlement, I know that there's Google Reader, Blogger, all sorts of other stuff. I'm touching on them, but that's a whole day worth of fun and games in itself. I'm just looking at search. Okay, so going back, and again, I told you I was going down to basic. When you were in library school, when you weren't in library school, this is how librarians often still conceptualise Google. PageRank was a secret source of Google, where Larry Page, it's not got anything to do with web pages, it's Larry Page, decided that that yellow page at the top would be more likely to rise to the top of Google's results because there were more authoritative sites pointing to it than some of those little green ones down the bottom because they had fewer sites pointing to them. And of course that could be gamed by search engine optimization. It was. However, that's not what's happening anymore, okay? I'm just going back to the why of Google. This is from the official Google blog. It's about Ad Perfect. It talks about how when things change, we're going to there's going to be new devices, but we're always going to do what we always did. We will continue to live by the philosophy that has guided our work from the outset. Getting the right ad to the right person at the right time matters. Okay, so there's a quote that I'm just going to show. It's actually, everybody keeps quoting it, and when I wanted to use it in a lecture, I actually looked back and found the attribution. It's actually, Metafilter is an information finding site. There's a guy called Blue Beetle, and this is Blue Beetle's quote, but people keep banding it about, okay? If you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you're the product being sold, okay? With Google, we're the product as searchers. The click-throughs and the eyeballs are what the advertisers are paying for. Very different relationship to information and information finding to what libraries have. I don't think it necessarily means that they do evil, though. Once all the ads rose to the top and your search got less specific, less useful to you, you would be taking your feet and you would be going elsewhere other than this search engine. It's a terrifically competitive business. So I don't actually necessarily say that the commercial basis makes search worse. I don't think that's so. But, I mean, it's fierce out there. In fact, if anybody's ever finished a level of Angry Birds, you get this. Go to Bing, okay? They really, really, really want our eyeballs. Okay, so I've had a look at Google. It's not all happy puppies and let's all be nice to the world. Now we're going back to name the search. Now you can cry it out. It was? Boxer. Okay, so Boxer is a pair of underwear, Boxer is sport, and Boxer is also a breed of dog. Now, as librarians, we've often felt kind of smug. Google doesn't know that they're different things. We do. We can increase the quality of the question, and that's something that Stephen Abram talks about librarians being very good at. Let's have a look at where that fits though. Let's do another one. And you can yell this one out. Okay, first one to yell it out. Mercury, that's right. So you knew it was Mercury. In fact, when you look at this, your mind is really good. You've got language. So when you look at this, you can actually make the statement in your mind, Mercury is a planet, okay? You can also make the statement about this one down here, Mercury is an element. If you start talking about Freddie, you can say Mercury is a rock star. Up the top, you can talk about Mercury being a winged messenger of the gods, and apparently also an outboard motor. Okay, as human beings, as librarians, or even just humans, we have language that lets us differentiate between those meanings. Okay, so when this little guy comes across the counter to us, we've always said that, okay, with reference, we have reference interview techniques, we know what we're doing, we know our users, that's a strength. Let's just have a look at what's happening right now. Google's gone way beyond PageRank, okay? If I knew what Google was doing, I would be hiring myself out as a search engine optimization expert, not standing here talking to you. Nobody really knows what they're doing, but there are some things they're doing when they do a search. Okay, there's two things that they're doing to make their searches much, much more precise nowadays. The first is personalisation. I'm going to talk about 3 elements of that. The second is semantic analysis. And I'm going to use that term, and the reason I'm using that term is there's some other words I'm going to use like triple. When you hear those words again, I don't want you to cover your head with the doona, go back to sleep and think this has nothing to do with me. I want you to prick up your ears and think, I'm going to work out how this relates to me, okay? So my idea today is just to bandy a few terms around, explain them a bit, but actually to suggest, if you're not already, this is what you need to pay attention to. Okay, So with personalisation, 1993, famous cartoon, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, okay? So, and that was true, you know, we all laughed because it was true in 1993. So they might have traced your IP address back to the fact that you were from the Happy Valley Kennels or something like that, but they couldn't conclusively see that you were a dog when you were posting. If you've not seen the TED Talk by a guy called Eli Pariser, who wrote The Filter Bubble, P-A-R-I-S-E-R, go and find it, hunt it out. It's well worth saying, and the way that he describes 2011 search is this. The internet doesn't just know you're a dog, it knows your breed and it wants to sell you a bowl of premium kibble, okay? So the idea is that Google, the search I do, is really different to the results that are coming up for you. It personalises and it knows things about me. One of the ways it does is by cookies, okay? Little bits of information added to your browser so that next time you go to a web page, that web page can access that information and do stuff in response. It's the reason why you don't have to keep logging into a lot of sites, because you're already logged in even though you come back. However, if you were to go to dictionary.com and type in the word depression, 233 tracking cookies and beacons are added to your web browser. So next time you go to a site, you'll be served ads for Zoloft rather than Hawaiian holiday. This is serious stuff because in the UK, 29th of May, legislation was passed saying that if you want to add cookies to a browser site, you've got to ask the user, okay? Not so here. Okay, second thing it's looking at is search history. Now, if when you created your Gmail account, if you've got one, you didn't tick the box that said, don't keep search history, or if on the 1st of March this year, when Google changed its legislation, its terms and conditions about search history, you didn't then scrub your search history, I want you tonight to go to www.google.com/history, because there you'll see a history of everything you've searched on Google when you've been logged into your Gmail account. I actually scrubbed it. You could see if I try and look at my history, it says, hey, wouldn't you like to get it? I scrubbed it on the 1st of March, and when I did, my searches became a lot less precise, okay? It had 5 years of no... It had... It's working. It had 5 years of knowing that when I put in Mercury, I was going to the rock star, not the element, okay? It no longer had that. However, it might well have it on you and your users. Okay. The third thing that it looks at is the social graph. I don't think there's anybody here who thinks Google Plus is a decent replacement for Facebook. It didn't have to be, because it hoodwinked, fooled, had us who were curious. Tell Google our social graph. You remember the circle stuff, if you actually did go into Google+? You told it a lot of information, not only about who you knew, but how you knew people. And when I go into my Google Plus account, it's really interesting, because we were talking about this forum, and I had my Gmail open. You can see there's Kate, there's Francis, and there's Carol, all being suggested as people I might know, okay? What it's done is it's worked out that Kate, who is there, is Librarian Kate in Queensland because of the circles that people have her in. So there might be rugby playing Kate in Canada. It's disambiguated the people, okay? And that's a really important thing that Google's doing. Not only does it know you and what you're doing, but it knows what your friends are doing, what your relationship is. And if Kate actually clicked Freddie Mercury more often than Mercury Elements, when I then did my search, it would change the search presented to me. Okay, really different stuff. And I don't know about you, but when I'm on the reference desk, I don't actually know what Jane's friend over in Canada has been searching on and what she's got in common with Jane. Okay. The other thing it's doing is semantic analysis. And this is the bit where don't listen to me and go, substitute what I say with blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you've got a sentence like Mercury is a planet, and the idea behind semantic analysis is merely you can put in a natural language query into a search engine, it will understand it and bring back a meaningful result. That's all it does. Okay, so something like Mercury as a planet makes sense to us. What if the sentence was Mercury as a boxer? Doesn't mean that somebody's got a really fast dog and it was like the messenger of the gods, so they called it Mercury, and Mercury's a boxer. Or does it mean that Freddie's going to put on some gloves and he's going to go in the ring? Okay? I don't know. You don't know. If somebody came across with just that information, you would ask questions. Google is pre-indexing the questions, not just the answers now. Okay. PowerSet is a company that's been bought by Bing. MetaWeb has been bought by Google. Okay, these are companies that were specialising in semantic search before they became part of those companies. Okay, so the way it's being used first off, it's okay, I've still got it on my screen. Thank you. The way it's being used first off is, I don't get this when I log in. This is my friend Stephen in the US. Now, what you're seeing here on the right-hand side is not, you know, if you linger on the link on the left, it shows you the page itself rather than taking away. That's not what this is. This is something called the knowledge graph, which is disambiguating the term that you've just put in. So if the chances were that Stephen was more likely to go to sporting events and any sporting events, because they know that his history is football, cricket, whatever, so it guesses boxer from that, then it would actually put the boxing sport there. It also has this people search for that. What they're trying to do, and it's the same thing that, you know, that linger and you get the web page over here thing is trying to do, is keep you on Google. Want your eyeballs, want your click-throughs, so you're not going out to that other site which is selling advertising. Okay, so that's the motivation behind that. But that's just where it's starting. Okay, so when we have the sentence Mercury is a boxer, what that is known as a triple. Okay, with semantic analysis, all sorts of meaning, if it can be got down to that level of sentence, that's where the machine is doing the learning, okay? It's a triple. So you've got Mercury, subject, is a predicate, boxer, object, okay? So all the information that there can be is expressed in these things called triples. So you might have something, J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and that's where it gets kind of interesting for us as libraries. I'm going to allude to the word linked open data. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's a way of standardised data being let out to play, being able to then be interpreted as triples and to be made meaningful, okay? And there's an awful lot of different organisation, institutions, data sets around the world that are part of linked open data. So with the J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone triple, with the element J.K. Rowling, if one goes to Wikipedia, Wikipedia knows what a J.K. Rowling is, okay? A J.K. Rowling is this one. Not only that, it can pass that information on to a whole lot of other data sources and data sets. So the way it does that is via something called DBpedia, which you actually know about, because it's this. Okay? You know that little square box which has got the standardised information in a standardised way about almost everything. So if it was a game, it would be talking about the day it was released. Okay, maybe the creator. So this is actually Wikipedia information produced as a series of triples that can be understood and mixed as linked open data. How's it being used? This is a very old representation of the universe of linked open data. It's from 2009. I do it deliberately because the one that's there now is too large and you couldn't see anything. But down here, that's DBpedia, okay? And it links through to something like Libris, which is the Swedish National Library, okay? The Swedish National Library, all their data is in a format that can be mixed out. Okay, so here you've got a case of the Wikipedia about the author J.K. Rowling. So that's an example of just the simple interlinking. So DBpedia might want to link out through to Project Gutenberg, might want to link out through to BBC programmes. But the thing is, all this data is available and the richness is available to play. It will combine with personalisation for something like Google to actually know not only what you want, but what's out there in a meaningful way. And in libraries, we do this. This has been anonymised, okay? This is the online database pages. We expect people to find their source, click through, do a query, come back, not find what they want. Okay, what are we telling our users? One, about our sophistication in terms of understanding search, and two, about what we give them, okay? Let's move on to Harry Potter World. I'm going to go quicker. Okay, I'm really talking about changes to how people get content. Okay. The library role, Harry Potter published, there is definitely, always was, a role for libraries in Harry Potter, at least for the publication of the first 7 books. Okay. However, there's a few terms, ideas that the whole idea of Harry Potter brings up. The first is transliteracy, which is a term I hate. So does Kate. We've had this discussion. But it's a nice shorthand that kind of means the ability to read texts and to understand across a number of medium. But it also means that something like Harry Potter, for my kids, it's not just a book. For the last 2 years, believe me, I walk past their room, it's been this. It's been Stephen Fry's voice as an audiobook. It's also this, though. It's lunchboxes, it's Harry Potter scene at game, it's T-shirts. The whole universe for them is distributed, okay? They're transliterate. Although when I explained this to my kids, one of them looked at me and just said, nah, it's the best book series ever. So it's possible that actually I'm talking rubbish. But actually the idea is that if we don't actually acknowledge and understand that Harry Potter is not just a book by J.K. Rowling, but it's a heck of a lot more, and people need to understand how to access that, we'll be doing our readers a disservice. Harry Potter brings up the issue of piracy. As we know, J.K. Rowling didn't release the rights to eBooks until very recently. That doesn't really matter. Pirate Bay, Harry Potter, download, okay? I'm sure you were all getting your content that way. And if you weren't, I can tell you that a heck of a lot of your potential users were. And we actually need to know what they're doing and how they're doing it. Okay. There's no Gympie branch of Pirate Bay, okay? I'm going to talk about Gympie a couple of times today. I apologise if anybody's from Gympie here. But the idea is that it would be ridiculous for somebody in Africa, somebody in Sweden, somebody in Brisbane to try and find their individual branch of Pirate Bay in order to download the ebook of Harry Potter. However, we expect them to do something kind of like that to get our e-content. So technically, and I'm sorry, there's a spelling mistake on this slide. Okay, technically, geographic location does not matter with e-content. We are treating it as though it does. Okay. Harry Potter brings up the issue of author control and the author being associated with the distribution of content. There's a heck of a lot more about that, and I'm not going to go into it. It's an exciting area. However, J.K. Rowling released Pottermore. That's where she's got about 12,000 words, I believe, of the Harry Potter world that haven't yet been released. She's releasing it here, not through libraries, not through publishers. There's fan fiction, and of course there's the ebooks that could be downloaded. Renting e-content, okay? Yeah, we have Overdrive and the Harry Potter books. Bless her little cotton socks that she actually released the ebooks through Overdrive, because there's absolutely no requirement that she do that. And actually in January when I gave a paper at Vala, we were speculating that maybe libraries would have no further role in the continuing access to Harry Potter texts. And it's just by grace and favour really that J.K. Rowling has recognised the position of libraries and made a deal with Overdrive. It's interesting times though. However, you have to pay your subscription or else it disappears. There's no concept that you can give the old e-copy of Harry Potter to the little kid who really loves it because it's falling apart, which we can with our books now. Okay, the divide and conquer sales model. Pretend you're not a librarian, pretend you're a user. You want to download Harry Potter. Penrith City Library, you go to penrithliboverdrive.com. You're in Gold Coast, you go here, it looks like this, but you go to goldcoast.lib.overdrive.com, Brisbane City Library. My goodness, you're going to the same spot and you're forced to have different interfaces, different numbers, all sorts of different stuff to get your e-content. That makes sense if you're trying to parallel the physical world. It doesn't make sense in an e-content world. Harry Potter maybe means war. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Kindle Owners Lending Library. Okay, that's not in Australia, it's for US people only who have a physical Kindle. 19th of June, which actually was yesterday in the United States, they made a big fuss, a big hoo-ha. We're going to let people borrow the Harry Potter ebooks through the Kindle Owners Lending Library. About 6 weeks ago, they put the announcement out. I'm not going to read the whole lot, but it was very cute. It was this little scroll that said, "Dear Muggles, blah, blah, blah." But it also has a really interesting and disturbing passage in it. And just look at the use of the word traditional, because I find it amusing. You have to laugh. With traditional library lending, the library buys a certain number of ebook copies of a particular title. If all of these are checked out, you have to get on a waiting list. For popular titles like Harry Potter, the wait can sometimes be months. With the Kindle Owners Lending Library, there are no due dates. You can borrow as frequently as once a month, and there are no limits on how many people can simultaneously borrow the same title. So you never have to wait in line for the book you want. Them's fighting words, okay? They're saying we're a better library than you, okay? What are we going to do with this? I don't know, okay? But we're going to have to do something. Okay, quickly to Library World. Going to do a few quick stats, and I'm going to miss out some of the stuff on the slides. Okay, 2005, Perception of Libraries and Information Resources, OCLC surveyed a number of United States adults, asked the question, the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about libraries, books, 69%. 2010, they repeated the study. Asked the same question, first thing that comes to mind when thinking about the library. Books, 75%. It had gone up in 5 years. I don't know what we do with that, but it kind of scares, worries me. Okay, I was going to look at the IFLA Public Library Service Guidelines. I'm not going to look at too much at them, but one of the things I am going to do is read out a sentence because I think it's really, really important. It's stuff that Jeanette was alluding to earlier. Libraries have an important role in the development and maintenance of a democratic society by giving the individual access to a wide and varied range of knowledge, ideas and opinions. That's a huge jump from where we started with what Google is and what Google does. Okay, to me it's a point of differentiation. Okay, so what? I've just got 10 ideas that I'm going to go through, and some of them you might need to ask me to explain. I don't think so. I think they kind of arise from what I've been saying. Okay, the idea one is use consortia to buy generics. Okay, by generics I mean those 1,000 copies of Harry Potter that we knew would be going into Queensland libraries. Okay, why does everybody have to negotiate contracts, do that buying, do that covering? Why can that generic stuff that everybody's going to want, all those bestsellers, why can that not be done centrally? And I don't care if you think you can't get along, okay? It doubly is important for e-content, okay? The generics, the stuff that every library is going to have access to, it doesn't make sense to bow to the divide and conquer publishers model. Idea two, focus on the deeply local. I believe we have local history information. We have information that's important to our particular users. We've got a remit to digitise, to get the metadata on it and to make it available as linked open data to share with humanity. And I don't actually back off from having such a grand vision of what public libraries do and how important that small rate book is in a very small town. Idea three, not all of our potential users obey the law when obtaining the content. If you don't know how to use a BitTorrent client, I suggest tonight you go home, you install one, you find something that can legally be BitTorrented, because stuff can be legally BitTorrented, and you download using BitTorrent and see how hard it is, because you need to know how your potential users are getting their content, because illegal content supply is a hidden competitor. If you're going to the local councillor and saying, please give us more money for Overdrive so that your teenage children can get access to the Harry Potter eBooks, and the councillor actually knows that somehow, they don't know how it happened, their kids are reading the Harry Potter ebooks just fine, thank you very much. They're going to have a less compelling inclination to actually give you the funds for Overdrive, okay? So we actually need to know where people are getting their other stuff. Idea five, public libraries should not be funded to serve everyone. Everyone should be welcome. Public libraries should welcome everybody, but I'm really glad that Jeanette said 3 or 4 paragraphs of it because this can just be shorthand. Okay, I believe that we have to stop saying that we're actually there for the teenage children of the councillor who can download their ebooks for free from BitTorrenting, making an illegal choice, okay? I believe that actually there's people who don't have the literacy, don't have the money, don't have the ability, access, language, whatever it is that is stopping them from being part of a literate society. And we actually need to say, okay, maybe they're our clients now that the Google world is providing information for other people. Idea 6, hybridise. Drop the word library if necessary, but don't talk about it. Don't have that discussion. Library, librarian. We can get over that. We can either stop it or not, but just don't have that conversation, just do it or don't. The idea is that art galleries, museums, libraries, broadcasters are converging with what we do, what our skills are, where our venues are, and we probably need to hybridise with those. Idea 7, there's no gimpy branch of Google, value venue. Okay, that's something that we have that's valuable, and we need to work out how we can actually use that for more than just a storehouse of those books that the 75% of the population associate us with. Idea 8, democracy, advocacy and community are our point of difference. And we need to make that really, really clear when we're talking about our funding. Idea 9 comes from somebody who's looking into the value of public libraries in the Netherlands. It's a paper that's going to be given at IFLA. They distinguish between outputs, number of volumes in the library, number of people through the door, and outcomes. What does it mean? What does it mean to your society and to your community that that's being done? And we actually need to look at outcomes, even though it's much harder to pin them down. And idea 10 is just a very simple, small idea, really. Stop doing one thing, then stop doing another thing. Deaccessioning video cassettes and maybe the audio tapes was easy, but there's bigger, better targets that we need to stop if we're going to let in some of these other purposes. Thank you.
Well, now I want to say a whole lot of things that I hadn't planned to say. Damn. Like Kathryn, I talk really fast. Slides and all sorts of materials will be available on my website afterwards, and the address is up the top of the page there. I've got 4 rounds for you today, 4 big things that I want to cover. But before I do that, what I want to say first up is that people, information, technology and experience are my thing. So my interest in terms of research and teaching is in how people connect with information and technology, how people connect to information using technology, and what their experience is in doing that. The next thing I want to say is I love public libraries. And the reason I say that is because I used to hate it as somebody who worked in public libraries when we get trainers from academic libraries and they come and tell us how to do our jobs, but they didn't really necessarily understand what we were about. So, round 1. This is a statement we were given when we were invited to speak at this event. And the statement is, libraries need to reassert themselves as providers of balanced and significant information. And that statement came from a futurist, and it's also something that's been said by various different people. But I fundamentally disagree with that statement. To me, it translates as this: libraries should position themselves as monolithic storehouses of the world's most important information, which we dole out on request. I just don't think that that's what we are. So let's break down that statement so I can tell you why I think it's not what we do and not what we are. First of all, I want to challenge your conception of what information is. Hands up if the word information makes you think of text. Excellent. Or a couple of people. Good. Those of us who do research around information literacy and information practice and information experience will tell you that information is anything that informs. That can be, for you, a bird chirping as you walk down the street. If you're a musician and you hear rhythm in life, that's informing your practice and your experiences. In a very digital world where we're all immersed in media all the time, information isn't just text anymore. It's images, video, audio. It's anything that comes into our horizons. The other kind of thing I wanted to challenge around information is the idea of content. And we talk about libraries and we talk about information, but I think actually we should be talking more about content. In the research domains, there's a bit of a slippage of terms. So information and content are sometimes used interchangeably to mean the same things. So when we look at media studies and social media research, for example, people talk about content there, but as an information experience researcher, I look at that and say that can be considered as information. But when we think about, for example, leisure reading, you're probably not necessarily thinking about that as being information. It's more about content. This is something that Kathryn and I fundamentally disagree on, and that is that I think we're in the content business in libraries, and Kathryn thinks we should get out of it. Is that a fair quote? No? Really? We can talk about it. But I still think that we are in the business of providing content to some audiences and in some formats. We can talk about that more later. The next kind of concept in that initial quote that I wanted to challenge is the idea of balanced and significant content. So let's give that a bit of thought. Significant. How well does Mills and Boon circulate in your library? Would you call that significant? Is it significant information? Balanced. So I'm guessing you've got a really good collection on jihadist ideology. And then there's the concept of judgment that comes with the idea of significant and balanced. Is it actually our job to be the judge of what significant is, and even what balance is? As librarians, I hope we all aspire to not censor in our collection development and not censor in our interactions with customers. But, beyond that, is it actually our role to judge? The next word I want to unpack in that statement is the word provider, which, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, means a person who or thing which supplies or provides something. So to me, the word provider implies that the library owns the information and supplies it to the customer. Is that the kind of implication you guys get from the word provider? I would argue that information is actually not ours to provide. We're not the gatekeepers anymore. Are we actually providers of information, or are we now facilitators of access to information? The definition for the word facilitator is quite interesting. It is defined in many ways, 3 of them that I think are relevant for our context here. A person or thing which facilitates an action, a process, or a result. So our assistance that we provide to customers in finding information, I would call that facilitation. Another definition is one whose role is to foster communication or understanding. It's about being a mediator. I think that's also probably pretty true of what we do with our customers. We can also be considered to be an attendant, an assistant, or guide in the process of seeking and using information. And again, that's another definition of facilitator. So for me, words like facilitator seem to be much more relevant than words like provider. What we actually do is not give people information, not take information off our shelves and provide it to them. We actually facilitate connections. So we're not necessarily saying to the customer, here's that piece of information that's going to answer your exact question. What we do instead is we connect people to people and people to information, and sometimes people to knowledge and all sorts of other interesting connections that help people to find and use the information they need. So, to my way of thinking, reasserting ourselves as providers of balanced and significant information is essentially a very bad idea. Because information has changed. It's not what it once was. We can no longer hope to organise, store, and grant access to the world's knowledge. So that goes back to Kathryn's bibliographic universe. Why is that? Because it's estimated now that a week's worth of the New York Times contains more information than a person was likely to come across in a lifetime in the 18th century. Just 1 week. So why would we reassert an 18th century model of librarianship that says we're about providing access to information, access to quality and significant information? Are you with me? Okay. So that's round 1. Round 2. So if we shouldn't be reasserting ourselves as providers of balanced and significant information, what should we actually be doing? What is the role of the public library in a Google world? This is it for me in a nutshell. I think our role as public librarians and the role of public libraries generally, in fact the role of libraries full stop, is about empowering people. It's our mandate. I'm going to read from the ALIA guidelines for public library services here. A public library services its community through the provision of access to knowledge, information and works of imagination through a range of resources and services. Public libraries have an important role in the development and maintenance of a democratic society by giving individuals access to a wide and varied range of information, ideas, opinions and skills. The role of public libraries is essential in developing an educated society through programs that improve literacy and information literacy, including lifelong learning opportunities. Public libraries contribute to economic prosperity by helping people improve their skills and life chances. So for me, empowering people through libraries is about these 5 things, and possibly a few more that I haven't got here. The first one that we do is we empower people to find, consume, interpret and apply information. And that's about helping them develop their information literacy skills. We also help them to harness the power of technology. So we help them to figure out how they can apply technology in their lives and how they can apply it to finding the information they need or to undertaking the leisure reading that they might want to do. We empower them to be lifelong learners by helping them have access to the information and resources they need to do that. Through all of this, we're also empowering them to be active participants in society. And we're also encouraging them to live their best life. In a Google world, we need to be the people that are empowering our users to facilitate digital inclusion. What does digital inclusion mean? The Vice President of the European Commission has this to say, and that is that the digital world is for all of us. Is the digital world for all of your customers right now? Can they actually participate in a digital world? Does the digital divide really matter? I think this is something we've recently stopped talking about, and one of the reasons I think we've stopped talking about it, it has something to do with the NBN, and I'll come back to that in a minute. This is, to me, why the digital divide matters, and this is again from the European Commission. Exclusion from the digital world will have progressively worse social implications over time. It will imply exclusion from information, economic opportunity, social contact, even health, education, or government services. Most worryingly, those most at risk of this digital divide tend to be already at risk of isolation and exclusion in other ways. So the elderly, people who don't have the same kinds of abilities that other people have. You can see this play out if you're on Twitter. I don't ring anymore when I've got a problem with Telstra or Vodafone. I just whinge on Twitter, because then you're not on the hold for 45 minutes and you usually get your problem answered pretty quickly. That, to me, is a massive digital divide issue. What happens to grandma down the street who's not on Twitter? She has to sit on hold for 45 minutes and get the substandard service that other people do. Another thing that comes out of the European Commission work on digital inclusion is this statement that internet access is a utility. It's like access to electricity. We cannot have some citizens cut off from the mains network. My internet went down for 20 minutes the other week when I was trying to mark, and I thought my arm had fallen off. I couldn't do any other meaningful work in the meantime, and I couldn't mark because I was marking digital content that my students had posted online. And that 20 minutes was a massive problem for me. What I would add to that statement is it's not just about having the connection, it's actually knowing how to flick the switch, and that is much more important. It's not just about access, It's also about efficacy. And people who've done research into the digital divide will tell you that it's actually not money or financial ability to have internet access or the tools and technologies that impacts on this digital divide factor that keeps people on the wrong side of the digital divide. It's actually about efficacy, about their ability to believe in themselves and believe that they can do this. I've got a newsflash for you, and that is that the NBN is not going to fix the digital divide in this country. What it's going to do is roll out internet so that it is more like a utility, as it should be, but it's not going to fix that ability to flick the switch. There will still be people who don't know how to do that. So the NBN isn't going to fix things, but you guys can, by empowering your users, whether it's one at a time or many people at a time. Still with me? So round 3, how do you actually do that? The first thing we need to do is have empowered organisations, so empowered libraries. How many of you here are branch managers or above in your library services? Okay, so a few people. Guess what? While we've still been fighting about whether the library can have their own Twitter account or whether they have to use councils or whether library staff can actually have access to social media in the workplace, the rest of the world has moved on. We need to sort this out now. It's gone on for too long. And the only way that we're going to sort this out is by uniting and lobbying together. So no more writing a business case and sending it up through the ranks. We all need to get together. Every public library in this state could probably solve this if you all got together and worked on it. So it's time to collaborate. We also need to have empowered staff. That's something I hate more than anything. It's walking into a library and seeing disempowered staff. Your staff are skilled. Most of them have a master's level qualification, if they're a professional librarian. Encourage them to use their expertise and their qualifications to do something, to empower their users. But they first have to be empowered. We need to recognise people's skills, acknowledge their expertise. If you pay someone a bomb of a salary to be an expert in online services or, I don't know, an expert in provision of reader services for adults, then acknowledge that expertise and let them run with it. It's really important that we empower our staff, but it's also really important that you guys empower yourselves. Your professionals and your professional development is your own responsibility. So you need to be making yourself aware of what's happening in the broader world so that you have an awareness of what the issues are for your customers. And the third step, of course, is the empowered customers. And this is not where we teach them fancy Boolean searching or how to use the library catalogue. This is where we go to them in the spaces they're in, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and we show them how to use those tools better and how to make them work for them. It's about boosting confidence, encouraging people to use technology intuitively rather than learning the archaic systems that we still have in place. We need to show them the value of technology in their lives. So I've recently been running a training program for Logan Libraries on how to use iPads for program development and delivery. And we've had great outcomes just by sending the staff home with an iPad for a week, because that gives them an opportunity to go and see how this tech fits into their lives, and they can then translate that back into their service. So we're almost there. Round 4. These are the things we need to admit. You know that slogan that's going around that says librarians were the original search engine and it's all written in Google colours? You know what? We actually suck at search compared to Google, and we just need to get over that. We need to let our users use Google and show them how to do it better and to refine things, but we just need to get over this whole bringing them back into our space and using our search facilities. This isn't ancient Greece, and you aren't running the Library of Alexandria. We can't possibly have it all, and we shouldn't even be trying to. The final point I wanted to make here is that Google's mission is to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, as Kathryn told us earlier. That's not what we do. And it's not what we should be aspiring to do. We can't possibly do it. We are never going to win back that ground from Google, that ground in terms of organising information on that huge scale and the quality of their search applications. What we need to do is focus, as Kathryn said, on what makes us different from Google. And what makes us different is you guys, the people that we have in our libraries that can help other people. You guys, the empowerers of the people. Empowerer isn't actually a word, and I think it's a very good one. So my final thought for you is this. We need to stop worrying about eBooks, Amazon and Google, and we need to start using our imaginations and working out how we can empower our users to live better lives, to be included in the digital world that is around them. And that's it from me.
Good morning. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm Tammy from the Development and Learning team. We're going to take a break now, so we'd like to invite you to join us for morning tea on the Queensland Terrace, which, as you exit the doors, is the space just to the right. If you have an overcoat with you, please bring it. We'll need it, but we have heaters, so hopefully we'll manage. There's facilities if you need to use the toilets directly opposite the exit, and then if we could all be back in ready to go again with Jemima's session straight up at 11 o'clock, please. Thank you. So welcome back, just as you all get settled. It's good to hear that there's such a buzz and a vibe after morning tea. We'll just get most of you back in here. Okay, so we'll get proceedings underway again, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jemima McDonald to the floor. Thanks, Jemima.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Lovely to be here. Just a couple of things before I start. This is from a university library's point of view, and I am Information Services team leader. I was acting manager when I was called upon to do this, so I'm demoting myself in front of you. And the other interesting, there's synergies already between what's already been said and what I've got to say today, and I think good synergies. Interesting to me that Jeanette mentioned the Australian press in her introduction, because I worked at John Fairfax for many years as a librarian and have friends there still, and have seen with the decline of the company, the decline of the library, and it's a very, very sad story indeed. I was going to talk about it in this paper, but I cut it out because it just took up a bit too much time. If you want to hear about it, I'm quite happy to talk about it later. Okay, so thanks Katie and Kathryn. They were two great presentations. You'll be happy to know I'm not going to say much about this. I think Katie's covered it quite well. I think that this is a backward-looking statement. The horse is bolted. There's no way we can turn back time. The challenge for us is much bigger. Information is abundant, available and free. People think everything's online. I don't think we can combat that perception on a large scale. If we do, we're wasting our time. What we do need to do is rethink who we are. We need to think about what we do and how we do it right here, right now, as well as looking ahead and being smart and strategic. We need to diversify to survive, adapt or die. When times get tough, businesses diversify. There's no reason why we can't do that too. We need to rethink what we do, how we do it, keep adapting in rapidly changing times. Okay, so a little bit, and of course at UTS I think we've started doing exactly that. And this presentation is going to be a lot about what we have plans for the next 5 or 6 years. Okay, so a little bit about us. University of Technology Sydney is very close to the city centre. 35,000 students, a large international population of students. We have over 200 computers in the library. Last year we taught 972 sessions, reaching 21,000 students. I was really amazed when I saw that figure, and we all felt very tired. So I'm sure you can imagine why. That's exactly why we were tired. And 1 million people walk through the door and back out every year. Okay, so this is a graphic that the University Librarian Mal has been working with our designers on visualising where the library is headed, and I think it encapsulates it really well. We're planning our new library, which is scheduled to open in 2017. So as you can see on the left, the bar, it's mostly around knowledge, but we're expanding into collaboration and into culture. So, and here are some of the ideas informing the design, led by Mal, and I'm basically channeling Mal now for the next couple of slides. And some of you probably heard Mal speak, he's a great speaker. Okay, so we want to make the library space more than just book storage and access to databases. About 75 to 80% of our collection will be housed in a library retrieval system, similar to the one that Macquarie University has in Sydney, which will be underground and on-site right beside the library with storage for over 1 million books. That's going to be done, that will be in use by the end of 2014 or early 2015. We want to capture our clients' imagination as a way to market ourselves and also to expose them to more than just subject resources. We want to redefine the library as a cultural space as well as one of knowledge. We're creating customised physical spaces and will develop personalised web services and apps that assist users to search and find what they want and also to discover resources they didn't know about. Now I'll go into detail on the 3 elements of culture, knowledge and collaboration. So culture. The library is a welcoming and inspiring place with a mix of spaces and furniture. We've got spaces for interaction and open areas with comfortable seating. We're heavily used and very, very, very visible, so we've been holding more cultural events and purchasing 2 collections to put on show. We also acquire and display the work of students and academic staff, as well as our own staff. We have a number of artists in the library. I'm going to quote Zadie Smith. Well-run libraries are filled with people because what a good library offers cannot be easily found elsewhere. An indoor public space in which you do not have to buy anything in order to stay. In the modern state, there are very few sites where this is possible. That applies obviously to a public library, very much. And it's also how I think we see our library. The library is a neutral space where anyone can use the space to do whatever they want. Eat, drink, work in groups, use Facebook, email. The library has been described to me and to others in casual conversation as party central. There's a great buzz about it. There's always something going on. We really like that. We hold video and other competitions for the National Year of Reading. We held an edible books competition which was judged. The edible books themselves were made by library staff and it was judged by library staff and by the students. This is something we picked up directly from public libraries. So we look at public libraries in, I think, for inspiration, for community and collaboration. We've got a lot to learn from public libraries. We're expanding our collections of cultural significance. For example, we purchased a collection of books by Norman Lindsay last year, which is already being used by scholars. We want to excite curiosity, and we're developing a new service model, moving away from transaction-based services. The new service model will include moving from restricted opening hours towards 24/7 services, from desks, counters, signs, screens and boards, to orientation spaces, from website to applications and open development with our content and data, from catalogues to Google, Amazon, iTunes type interfaces, from face-to-face classes to ubiquitous learning, from the library only as a physical location to mobile services across the campus, both people and virtual. From passive consumers of technology to active trend setters and explorers through partnerships in research and publishing. From gates, don't, and shush, to welcome, how can we help? Search and discovery is a spectrum, and we're focusing more on enabling discovery of our collections. Discovery is accidental, incidental, curated, shared, and browsable. We're not moving away from search, just paying more attention to discovery, from simple things like book displays, again, public library territory, which public libraries have been doing for a long time, to the complex, using RFID to enable virtual browsing. So we'll be replacing physical browsing. Once the books go into the LRS, we're working, Mal has asked the IT department to start working on this now, improving online browsing, including the uniting of print and online resources, and possibly arrangements other than Dewey. We'll incorporate suggestions and recommendations, an opt-in Genius-like service that can list books you might be interested in based on your browsing and use patterns. We're also looking at the application of bookmarks to the collection, social bookmarks to the collection, as well as offering users the ability to tag catalogue entries. We're talking to UTS visual communication staff and students to look at visual ways to represent the vast amounts of data we have about our collections, their attributes and their use. So we're doing a lot of work collaborating with design staff, and the design staff are getting their students to come to the library and do projects based around it, leading to some very exciting ideas and really interesting ideas. We know our users also enjoy accidental discoveries, not necessarily related to what they first started searching for. So this is the serendipitous finding that people bring up a lot when we talk about taking the collection underground. So we might have to look at services like Tumblr, which is a cross between a blog, Twitter, and Flickr, YouTube, as a good example of shared content discovery or crowd-curated discovery. We think we can incorporate something like this in addition to more focused catalogue search facilities. Oh, okay, thank you. The library will act as a space in which interdisciplinary teams can meet and collaborate, acting as a connector, facilitating connections between students, teachers, and researchers. We're collaborating much more closely with student support units, teaching info lit outside the library, for example, in student housing, we're running classes every week. We're working on projects with academic staff, as I mentioned before. We also have an artist in residence, Chris Gauld, who is an ex-student of the design school and is also a casual lecturer there. He's working on the playful use of technology that relates to libraries. We're also planning a joint exhibition later this year with those key design staff. Okay, sorry about all the words, but they're good words. I really wanted to share what, these are Joan Fry-Williams. Some of the notes I took at a Joan Fry-Williams talk at the Intelligent Information Symposium in May. I really, really wanted to share them with you because ideas are gold, and I think the library, UTS is already on the path here, and I think there have been some mentions of this type of thing. They'll obviously be available afterwards, so you don't have to read them all, although you can. I suppose echo content curation. We spend too much time worrying about the containers of stuff. Convening, turning the learning commons into a thinking commons. There's just so many great ideas here. We're in the app business now. Beyond information to transformation, I think it's just really inspiring to hear someone like Joan. She calls herself a futurist, and she is a futurist. We need people like that to help us see beyond the here and now, to give us some ideas about where we might head. And I really love we will be in the meaning business. Sense making is the valuable part of what we do. As long as we keep focused on making meaning for people, we will be fine. I think they're really wise words. So cultural change, really as it applies to library staff. Oops, I've lost a page, sorry. Okay. Planning days have become much more dynamic and more engaging for staff. We're strongly encouraged to engage with faculty as well as support units. We're allowed to add to our timesheets faculty events that we attend after hours. So for Mal, it's so important that we engage with the faculty as well as the other support unit, that he's willing to let us be on work time for those things when they're after hours, which I think is extraordinary. Staff are encouraged to be creative, take risks and innovate. And we're working on being sustainable in our operations, procurement, travel, relationships and services. We have a community obligation to be sustainable, and this is an expectation of all libraries. We've developed our own sustainable collections model. Don't ask me about it. That was Alex Byrne. Quite not my area of expertise. And staff at team leader level and above have done workshops with a design company to work on sustainability in the workplace, which also touched on sustainability at a personal level. Okay, so as far as information literacy goes, okay, so I've said before, and we all know, that more information is freely available than ever before in the history of humankind. This is fantastic. Now we help people figure out what's reliable, and we help them find the most appropriate information using all the wonderful tools at their disposal. This includes teaching our clients to use Google better, choosing the appropriate source of information based on their information need, encouraging the use of technology, becoming providers of the tools that clients want, incorporating social media and Web 2.0 tools into the fabric of our training. We're working now on and we're also working on a project now to embed information literacy into the curriculum, and that's a project happening university-wide. So some of the things I've got listed here. Play Day happens every year. Some of you may have heard us talk about it. We've talked about it a bit. Game-based learning, so there's game-based learning happens in Play Day in the Amazing Race Library style. That's like a treasure hunt. The Google Skills classes, where we teach students and staff how to search Google better, use RSS feeds, how to use Google Scholar, books. We do a lot of screencasts and load them into YouTube, use QR codes, etc. You can see what we're doing there. Okay, information lit the future. Okay, I'm going to have to be fast. So these are, I've taken, again, a slab of information, of notes that I took at the Intelligent Information Symposium. This time it was a talk by Karen Stocks from Google. It was absolutely very, very interesting and had a very profound effect on me. So 10.8 million people watch online video per month. Mobile penetration of video is going through the roof. By 2016, 70% of traffic will be on mobile. A Cisco report predicts that by 2014, 90% of web traffic will be video. Right now, video is a third of web traffic. Think about how we're consuming video. How do we find them? We share what's good. 500 years of YouTube video is watched every day in Facebook. 700 videos are shared in Twitter every minute. Sharing is viral and has no frontier. What else are people watching other than entertainment? The second most popular category is how-to videos, and I think that's where we fit in. After this presentation, I concluded that the future is in video for us and that we need to dramatically expand what we're doing online and look at other ways of engaging with our clients besides online tutorials. Lastly, I just want to talk about the future of book collections. There's an awful lot being written about the book and the various formats and will the book survive. But I think one of the things that's really pressing for large libraries and in fact small libraries is the fate of their collections. Okay, so libraries all over the world are moving their collections, including their reference collections. We have a very small one now, it used to be much larger, to make their spaces more people-centric. How did this come about? In our case, it started as a response to the internet. We installed lots of computers so students could access the internet in the mid-90s. Then the practice of getting students to work in groups started to increase in faculty. That's now become prevalent. Enter the library as neutral space. We provided group study rooms, lots of computers and open plan areas suitable for group work, which faculty hadn't historically provided. This had to put pressure on our collections at some point. It costs money to store books. Most libraries don't have limitless amounts of it. Non-government library collections have been very vulnerable because of the increasing costs of commercial rental prices, and I was thinking they're very much about Fairfax. I'm sure you've all got examples of that. Okay, almost there. So the weeding, moving, discarding hasn't and isn't going to happen uncontested. Academic staff are concerned that students don't like to read and are dismayed that they don't share their love of the book. I'm speaking from a humanities viewpoint here. What happens to our collections is of great interest to many staff and high degree students. It's a very emotive issue for both library staff as well as our clients. In the fracas over the moving of 50 to 60, possibly more, % of Sydney Uni's research collection into off-site storage recently, it happened last year, one of the things that was most upsetting for academic staff apparently was that they weren't consulted. Change management isn't something that I think we do particularly well, and I believe it's worth getting the advice of experts on projects of this nature. If we're going to do this, we need to do it with our community's involvement as much as possible. Our clients feel like they're stakeholders, and they are. We exist because of them. They're our fans, they actually care, they're on our side, and we need to respect them. Of course, I know it's difficult. Our brand is the book, and we need to be seen to be good custodians of the book and knowledge, otherwise we will damage our brand. We really don't need that right now, and perception is important. 3 times I've either read or heard senior library staff refer to their collections as having a lot of crap in them. I can't say if that's true or not, and I repeat, not saying weeding shouldn't be done. It should be. However, I do ask myself, who selected the crap? Librarians and academics. So no academic will agree that librarians have enough subject knowledge to do weeding of an academic collection. We're caught between a rock and a hard place. Our academic staff often don't have time to devote to weeding. Libraries don't have the resources to actually do the job properly, relying on metrics to guide the process. This isn't perfect, and unfortunately I have no solution. We just need to manage this process a whole lot better. So I'm finishing with some quotes from a librarian in 1879. In just over 100 years, we're in the middle of one of the biggest information revolutions of all time. I wonder where we'll be in another 100 years. Would you like me to read that out? The human mind will despair, perhaps of power to deal with the illimitable mass. May we hope that when things come to such a crisis, human labour of the literary sort may be in part superseded by machinery? Then machinery has done wonders, and when we think of what literature is becoming, it is certainly to be wished that we could read it by machinery and by machinery digest it. That's amazing, isn't it? And this was said in the context of the revolution in printing. So, this technological change is with us to stay. This is what I mean, no going back. We just have to deal with what's the technology and the changes that are happening right here, right now. Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much, Jemima, and thanks to Katie and Kathryn for the excellent introduction, and to the State Library for inviting us all to speak today. You'll see from my slides that I'm not a designer, I'm the programmer in the group, so I'm probably not going to astound you with fantastic graphics. I didn't try to compete with anyone else. What I do want to do is give you a few ideas that you can take away from here today to consider what it is that we're talking about when we talk about a Google age. I know you're all librarians, and technically I am too, but I started out as a systems analyst, and that's really where I think I can add some value to this conversation. So I'm going to pick up on the theme of what kind of age we're living in and how do we succeed in this age. So we've heard some really interesting discussions from Katie and Kathryn and Jemima about how libraries could address the changes that we're currently living through. And I think the big thing, the big issue we have is we have all these companies who are doing things far better than we do when it comes to providing information or content, depending on your perspective, to the people that they serve. And I wanted to actually pick out a few companies in particular to talk about today, because these companies have a few things in common that I think libraries could take a look at and consider learning from. We don't have to copy them exactly because they're not actually in the same business we're in, as the other speakers have pointed out. But these companies all have a couple of things in common that I think we need to particularly take note of. They're built on very strong ICT, which we obviously are not. But more importantly, these people are all in the business of distributing content. Now, in the public mind, we are linked up with the distribution of content of a particular kind, books, as I believe we had pointed out to us several times already. So if we were in the business of distributing books and we've now lost our primary position in that distribution network to another company, why is that? What are they doing that is so different to what we're doing, and how can we look at that and change? So if you know me, you know that I tend to rabbit on at any presentation I give about things like user experience. And so I'm really pleased that when Kathryn spoke this morning, the first thing she talked about was Google's 10, not their 10 commandments, what do they call it? Things they know to be true, thank you. And the first thing that they know to be true is focus on the user and all else will follow. That is what these companies all have in common, these content distributors. They focus on their users and trust that all else will follow. So I'm now going to give you the highlighted editions of my user experience lecture. These are the 4 things that you need to focus on when you're looking at your users. This is what users expect from a user experience that includes any kind of content or information these days. They expect it to be fast. Oh gosh, that's interesting. I'll just talk. They expect it to be fast, they expect it to be effective, they expect it to be simple, and they expect it to be fun. And I'm going to dive into this a little for you so you can get what I'm really talking about. The pictures that I have in my presentation are all from the refurbished Kelvin Grove and Gardens Point libraries, because there's nothing like a tame crowd to promote your services, is there? So here's a picture in our library. I don't think I'd consider that fast, would you? I'm not just talking, though, about how Google will predict what you're looking for as you type your search in. I'm talking about another kind of fast, and that is the way these companies actually do their development. Facebook and Google ship code every single day, Amazon every week. Nobody in my 18, 19 years in working in library IT, I've had thousands of complaints about how slow the system is, and no one ever has complained that it was too fast. I wonder why. These companies that are doing really well do something that we don't do. They have a methodology for development that we in libraries simply don't have, and it's actually based on the scientific method. So what they're trying to do is they come up with a hypothesis, they will build something and let it go out there in beta. Who hasn't seen the in beta sign on everything? And then they get their feedback from users, and instead of looking at that as a criticism, they use it as some information to build into their process and develop improve their process. They iterate constantly. They use that cycle of pushing something out, getting feedback from users, seeing what does and doesn't work, and improving on it and pushing more things out. Iterative development. If you go to the Facebook headquarters or you go to the Google campus, you will see signs all over their walls that say things like "done is better than perfect." Who thinks that a librarian's going to put that on their wall, really? Oh, Kate, well done. Fantastic. Kate's got the manifesto on her wall. Librarians do have a real issue with control, don't we? We really, really want to be the best kid in the class. We really, really want to be perfect. And in the modern world, done is way better than perfect. The other thing you might see on the Facebook wall is this little phrase, "move fast and break things." This is a really important concept to get a handle on here. If you break something, you find out whether or not your users actually want it. And that might be some really helpful information for a business whose custom is declining, wouldn't you think? If we actually move fast and break things, we can tell which things we need to fix and which things we can just ditch. Failure is an opportunity to learn, and nobody is a better advocate for this than Thomas Edison, who was famous for inventing thousands of things because he always had a couple of hundred experiments on the go. And this is one of my favourite quotes of Edison's, that he hadn't failed, he'd just found 10,000 ways that it wouldn't work. Well, I think it'd be a good idea if a few people in libraries found a few ways it didn't work and publicly spoke about it. Because it doesn't mean it's failure, it means you've learnt something. It means you've got some feedback and you've acted on it. And as soon as you act on your feedback, you start getting a conversation going with your community, with your customers. And that turns you into somebody who is in a different business to what libraries have traditionally been in. You're no longer pushing things, you're engaging in a conversation and in building a relationship, which is what these companies all do very well. So that business of breaking something and then ditching it if nobody complains, that's because what we really need to do is the thing that is effective. And you know we can't do search, really. We are bad at search. But there's lots of other things that we can do that we're very, very effective at. And I would suggest that it's around the building a community, in particular in helping a community to build their knowledge, their digital skills, and all of those things that we as librarians can impart to our particular community, because we all have a different one. We need to find out what is effective and do only that. And in order to do that, we need to know our market. That is what Google does when they track you, what Facebook does when they track you everywhere, even if you don't have a Facebook account. They're finding out what you like and what you do because they want to know about you. They want to sell you things. That's the business they're in. And they don't bother to look at the number of people who hit their website last year and count up the number of e-journal downloads in the last 12 months and compare that with the previous 12 months. They don't give a hoot about history. They care about now, right now. When I try to find out what my users do, I often do the freaky, stalky lady thing and go sit in the library and have a look at them because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a middle-aged woman and these are my customers, and you'll notice that they're all, young, in this case, young men playing on their mobiles with their headphones on. Now, there is no way that I'm going to know what their experience of a library is like. I don't have that mindset. I don't slouch in my chair. I have no idea. I just don't get these people. The only way that I'm going to be able to understand them is if I try to put myself in their shoes by using my services, and if I go see what they're doing. So the way I do that, and I'm going to try and go to the internet in here. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'd urge you to have a look at this site, Splunk, and have a look at this software. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll just ditch it. Because we're going to move fast and break things. We'll see. All right. Now, the reason I'm trying to show you Splunk is because when you look at statistics, you'll probably at very best be looking at Google Analytics. I won't try and get into this too much. This is a company that provides the software that libraries, because we are so small in the online space, can use for free. This software will look at your web logs, your Apache web logs if you've got them, or at your Easy Proxy logs if you're an academic library and you provide access through to online content. You've probably got Easy Proxy, and it will tell you, well, let's see, what it told me on Monday was what the Bachelor of Nursing students had been doing all semester online. I could look at an individual Bachelor of Nursing student and see what he or she had accessed on my online journals throughout the entire semester. I could look at the Bachelor of Nursing students in aggregate and see what the average one did, and then I could see the outliers. I could match that up with information from my student system. I could find the people who got a 7 and a 6 and see what they did, and compare that to the people who got a 3. And that will help me to fulfil my university's goal of reducing attrition in the Bachelor of Nursing course, won't it? Because I can pick out the people who aren't doing well. Now think about the way we in libraries treat our data. We have always ignored it at best, and I'll try and go back to my presentation. Sorry. Oh, my apologies. Got it. I'm usually a keyboard girl. I'll try and go back to my presentation because I want to talk to you about what we do with our data. If you speak to your systems librarian, and I can see 1 or 2 of them here in the room, they will tell you that we don't keep our history on our who's borrowed what on any of our items. We don't keep it because of privacy concerns. Well, that's not the way all these companies that are doing really well in the online age act. That's not what they do. They follow you everywhere. They don't care about your privacy, because they're interested in their services, not your privacy. And that's what we need to think about as well. They're our customers as well, the ones who use Google and Amazon and Netflix. We need to know what they're used to, because their experience online will drive their expectation of our services as well. And if they're expecting, as they do, for us to keep history, then we're going to disappoint them. 18 months ago when I first started at QUT, I had a graduate student from the Creative Industries faculty come to me with a fabulous idea. She had this book out that was incredibly esoteric that she'd borrowed from the library, and it was recalled because somebody else wanted to borrow it. She was highly excited. Somebody else must be studying in her area. Only a geek would really be concerned about this. But she came to see me. I actually had an email from her on the first day I started work. She wanted to come and see me about how we could build a social community around the books in the library so she could talk to the person who wanted to borrow the same book she had. And I had to tell her the disappointing news that we didn't keep any data and couldn't tell her who'd borrowed that book. She's now doing that on Facebook. We've lost a customer, we've lost a service that actually would have been really, really valuable. Our problem with the way we approach our data is that we don't use it in a sensible way. And that brings me on to my next topic, simple. We have a tendency to present, as the girls have shown, this incredibly complex list of databases and expect our users to get in there and learn which database is good for them and learn how to search that particular database and to deal with these complex search interfaces that have multiple boxes to put things in. When I did usability evaluations at the University of Melbourne, we had a federated search tool and we had 2 boxes on the front page with a Boolean connector. And I did testing with 47 students. Every single one of them, whether they were a first year or a master's student, every single one put something in each box. And eventually by the 20th student I thought to say, why are you putting something in both of those boxes? Oh, well you have to fill out every box on the page just like you do with any other form, don't you? We presented them a search form that actually made it impossible for them to get an effective result because we hadn't thought about the way they might use it. We'd made it complex instead of simple. People aren't really as smart as we might think. Never underestimate the power of an idiot. So our computers, though, are really, really smart. And they're getting smarter by the day. And they can handle a lot more complexity than we currently push onto them. And that's what we ought to be thinking about. How we can, like Amazon, Google, Netflix and those other companies, how we can make the computer take the complexity and make the interface really simple for our users. How we can reduce their cognitive load, make it less of a challenge to deal with us, because if it's less of a challenge to deal with us, they will see us as a more engaging proposition and they'll be back to talk to us again. So I'm not even going to try to go to this one because I couldn't really show you too much on Spotify, on Splunk. Have a look in the Apple online store. Look for the Apple app for the Apple Store. It's very confusing to find. I think I Googled it by doing Apple Store app. Apple have got something that we really need to look at right now and start working on right now. If you have an iPhone, which I don't have, but if you have an iPhone and you install the Apple Store app, on your iPhone, you can tell the App Store when you're about to arrive and what it is you're looking for. So you can let them know when you're 500 metres away, I'm on my way and I'm looking for a new dongle for my MacBook Pro. And they'll get it out for you and have it on the counter ready for you when you walk in. When you walk in the door, you can go up to the shelf and you can pick up the dongle in its packet and you can scan the barcode. It deducts the money from your account and you walk out the door. You don't break your stride, you don't pull out your wallet, you don't have to interact with a person. You're in and out of that store in 2 seconds flat with exactly what you wanted. Now tell me why we can't do that in a library. Why? Really? It's actually perfectly possible. And if you've got RFID in your library, okay, they can't scan the barcode, what else can they do? Isn't there an NFC chip in most of these phones? If you can't do it for everyone, at least you can do it for someone. And if you've got barcodes on the back of your books and you've got a smartphone with a barcode scanning app, then tell me why you're not doing this already. It's just a question of a little bit of code, and we can help the people who aren't in our library because it's too slow and too ineffective. We can help the people who are in a hurry. And let's face it, all of our customers know that the only thing that they've got that isn't renewable is their time. And they really, really value it these days. So my last point that I wanted to make about why these really effective online companies are doing so well is that they tend to teach people things in a fun way, which I think is a bit of an issue for some of us. They have interfaces that will show you things that are built on gaming, and they also have a culture inside their company that is about fun and about learning through play. And we've heard a few people speak about this already, and at QUT I'm running a little thing called a technology petting zoo where I've got a whole stack of mobile gadgets like Nintendos and Motorola tablets and iPads and, you know, e-book readers. The idea behind the technology petting zoo is that the library staff can borrow these things for 6 weeks at a time, go away and play with them. They are deliberately not set up so that they can learn how to work with them. The iPads aren't there to help them on their business trip or with their committee papers or whatever else. And you've got to know that there is no business that you can conduct on a Nintendo 3DS, right? It's absolutely not for work. But the point is that if our staff can learn how to use these mobile devices by playing with them, they'll be much better able to relate to those boys slouching in the chairs before, much better able to relate to the way they interact with information and content, and therefore better able to consider how they might be able to improve services for them. So the other thing that these companies do, they hire for attitude and train for skill, and we really need to think about this in libraries. What is it that you learned at library school? And I graduated in 2009. What did you learn there that you couldn't have learnt on the job if you already had the attitude to learn? Really? Sorry, girls. I'm not trying to... Okay. I'm not trying to... Okay, all right. Your attitude, okay. These girls teach attitude, so that's what you can get. So at Google and at Facebook in particular, they don't actually hire all the smartest engineers. They also hire the people with the best attitude, the ones who are really willing to go out there and try something. And that's something that we need to encourage in our staff, and we've already heard from a couple of our speakers how we can do that. UTS is obviously on the track already for hiring and training for people who've got attitude rather than skill. So, to wrap up, fast, effective, simple and fun. Those are the sort of base components of the user experience that I think we in libraries need to consider. And the reason I think that we need to think about this is because of a little phrase that we repeat over and over in the web development world: experience drives expectation. We don't get our expectations of service just from the people that we deal with right now. We get it from all the experience we've had in the past week. And if you've been to some bank perhaps who had a fantastic personal service, and then you walk into a library where somebody's standing behind a desk saying, "No, shh," you're obviously going to think that there's a bit of a cultural difference, and you're probably not going to be as engaged with that person. We need to see where our customers, our particular communities, are interacting online. We need to see what they're used to, and that will tell us what their expectations are of our service. Because they won't just get it from what we've done previously, and they won't just get it from how they're interacting with us today. It'll build upon all of their experience across all of the online communities they participate in. And that's really the main thrust of my talk. Libraries should not be about books, as we've heard. They're not really about content, and it's not about technology. Technology is just a great support. It supports people, it supports networks, it supports building relationships, which is something we could really consider doing. But most importantly of all, it supports communities, and communities are the business that libraries are in. We support them in a variety of different ways, and we can use technology to do that. Oh, there's my superstar, Craig, one of my staff at one of our new libraries. Walk into your library now and what you see are people. And when you go online, that's what you should see also, people. It should be all about the communities and the people and what they want to do. Because library buildings on their own and library collections on their own and libraries on their own don't do a damn thing. People do. And you can. Thank you.
Here it is, it goes in here.
You don't need it? We probably need it because it's giving feedback. Just try.
G'day, good evening, good morning, I should say. My name's Francis Kneebone. I was inspired to think about what kind of Lego character I am from the previous talk. So I put this in. I'm kind of Generation X and Generation Y, born in 1978. So I'm an early adopter of technology, but I'm also highly cynical, and that kind of explains me. Since we're talking about Google, I've stored my presentation in, most of you probably know about this Google product called Google Docs. So this is a Google presentation stored in Google Docs, and that is a web address that will take you to a notes page of everything I'm talking about today, which should come up on your phone. So please turn your phone on. You normally get told to turn it off. And this is the type of thing I do every week. I give professional development to mainly teachers, sometimes librarians, people in education mainly, about how to use technology to improve education. So if you go to that address, you'll find my notes page. It looks a little bit like this. Oh dear. That's not a good situation. If I could get another computer, that's seriously not a good situation. No, I'll just go to laptop. No, it's not. Oh, could it be? Sorry, you think it was here? I think it's the old computer.
Just while we're getting sorted here, thank you for your patience. Once Francis finishes his session, we're going to invite all the speakers this morning to join us for a panel session, so you'll have plenty of opportunity for questions then. Thanks.
questions about this document and the document you're at least 22 of you, probably 30 by now, are looking at, is where does this document live? Who owns it? How safe is it? I get asked this question all the time. People don't know what the cloud is. They hear about it all the time. I start by saying it's a giant USB stick in the sky. But we know it's a lot more than that. You can collaborate, you can share, you can sync. In fact, this document lives in the fastest server Google can find that's readily available, which could be in a number of countries in the world. I don't know what country it's in. There's some issues around that, particularly for government departments. What happens with my information? What do they know about me now that I've written all this information on Google Docs? How does this change my expectations of information? How does it change your expectations of information? I've been doing this for a couple of years. I give away my notes live, and now people always say to me, oh, you didn't give us this bit of information right now. They expect it now. They want it all the time. How does it change? Has it made my life easier? Definitely. What's been gained? What's been lost? So I've got a lot of questions today, because I very much do live in a Google world. I'm an e-learning consultant, and I help develop content for people. It's just as important for me to find what I'm looking for on Google as it is for me to be found on Google as well. I'm very interested in Google Analytics and Google Search. My family, we live in Deagon in Brisbane. We're very much in a Google world. My 2-year-old daughter knows nothing else except computers. You can touch, you can grab her favourite cartoon anytime she wants. It's just there. And Google knows about us. That's the same street right there on Google Maps in Deagon. Sure. The big question I've had this year is that educators are using technology more and more. I think we're all more engaged with technology, which is exciting. And technology has become very user-friendly. But it seems like people's skills are going backwards. I'm increasingly finding teachers who, when I give them a web address, don't know how to put that into a URL bar. They don't know what that is anymore because they Google everything. And I don't blame them, because 9 times out of 10, that works for them. Does that matter? Does it matter that we know less and less about what's behind technology? Maybe it does. This was just released recently. Any of the Apple fanboys and girls in the room? Retina display MacBook Pro. One of the criticisms of this computer is that it's very hard to fix, it's very hard to update, it's very hard to open up and improve. In contrast to that, this is a Raspberry Pi, which is about 41 Australian dollars. It's the size of a credit card, and it's a computer. And you can see each moving part, you can adapt it, you can change it. It's built to help us understand how technology works, what's happening behind the scenes. This idea of it just works, I don't know if that's a good thing, necessarily. A lot of people live in a Google and Facebook world. How they access digital content is through these two spaces, these two rooms, these two paradigms, Google or Facebook. That's all they know about the web, and often that's all they need to know until they get to a point where they need to go outside of these spaces. And they're often stuck because they've been trained and taught how to use the web and find content through these spaces. Do you understand what I'm kind of raising here? So I want to talk about a few things. The first one is personal data. These are some things that I think maybe we ought to know, and we ought to help people entering your libraries understand about the Google world. The first is personal data. What does Google know about you? I've put that search term in because recently some people were arrested in a murder investigation, and they were found that they had actually Google searched that to help kill their victim. There's some things we don't want to be found online. This was done with Face Swap. It's an app that swapped my wife and I's our faces. There's some things we don't want Google to know about us. But what do they know about us? Oh, so I've got a link there. It's not working because I'm in, looks like Internet Explorer 6 or 7. But I can tell you, I've given you a link in your notes page, or if you click on the slides, you'll find that Google, if you go to your ad preferences, it will predict your age, and it accurately predicted my age. It accurately predicted my interests and the things I like. And Google's been tracking my search and my gender. It worked out what gender I am and what age bracket I'm in just from what I search. It's tracking your behaviour across 60 or more Google products. That includes YouTube, Blogger, Google Calendar, Gmail. It's tracking where you've been. Sorry, I can't show you the example now because of the browser I'm on. But where your iPhone is going, it's literally through geotagging, tracking where you are, where you're checking in, through Facebook and through other products. And if you want me to show you later, I can show you a map that's tracked my phone around Australia, places I've been, exactly where I've been. Who you know, who you're connected to, as someone mentioned before, what you're saying. And it's all in the name of making content more relevant to us. Doesn't matter that people know this stuff. Doesn't matter that they know what information is being collected about them, that there's an exchange happening. An exchange for search and better search, that the exchange is that they give away some of their personal information. Does that matter that people in your libraries understand that? Automated content. It's another thing I want to talk about. Web 1.0, we mainly hear about Web 2.0, and every conference has 2.0 after it. Web 1.0 is this idea of expert-generated content, that initially the web was made up of information produced by experts in their field. Web 2.0 is about user-generated content, social collaborative, information that has been generated by all of us. And suddenly all of us are journalists, all of us are experts. So we think all of us have a right to add to the web and add content. And now we have Web 3.0, system-generated content. I find this really fascinating. Information that's been automatically curated by systems. An example of that is just to type in pizza into your Google address bar, and it will automatically bring up your local pizza store. And it may bring up, as I've searched for movies here, Ben Petro, an old high school mate, says he rates that movie cinema as pretty good. That actually comes up in my Google search. It's an automated system. There's also some amazing content aggregators, like if you have an iPad, Flipboard or Zite, that curate information about a topic. So that's an e-magazine automatically generated out of all the tweets of the State Library, Queensland. Do people understand that a lot of the information they're looking at on screen was automatically generated by a system? It's been automatically curated or edited by a system. Doesn't matter that they know that. I keep coming back to that question. Portable content. We live in a world of portable content. It is like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We now have this in our pocket, access to the web, access to all this information in the world. And it is changing the way we think and the way we behave. There's this idea, and I'm definitely guilty of this myself, I don't see the point of learning as much content or holding as much content in my mind, because I think, well, look, all the content's here. Does that free up my mind to be more creative and think about other things? There's some truth in that. There's also probably a downside to that as well. Who can guess who said this? It is in fact affecting deeper thinking, the web. I still believe that sitting down and reading a book is the best way to really learn something, and I worry that we're losing that. Not all the good quotes are from Steve Jobs. But it was Eric Schmidt from Google. So even Google, people in Google are recognising that there may be a problem with portable content, access to content, a need for maybe deeper learning that is being lost. Just to finish up, I wanted to say that maybe there's a need for a new kind of literacy, a new kind of critical literacy, possibly digital critical literacy. So critical literacy, we talk about, we look at a piece of content and we say, Who's the author? What was the intent of this piece of work? Possibly, what's the ideology behind it? There's new questions we need to ask, and we need to teach others to ask. Where did this content come from? Who made this content? Was it expert-generated? Was it made by your peers and other users? Was it aggregated by a system? What state is it in? What's its permanence? What data type is it? People click on a link, it's an EPUB, it doesn't open on their laptop. Why is that? Do they need to understand about data types and what's going to work on different platforms? Does it have clout? I don't know if you've heard that term, this idea of, is it respected amongst, the community of experts, this information that they come across on the web? This is an example from a local library. A friend of mine who's a librarian at a university has said that students are struggling to filter searches at the library to find articles. All they have to do is click one radio button and they would easily filter their searches to find articles. Yet they constantly have students coming up confused and don't know how to filter their searches. But it's because we now have a generation who grew up with Google in primary school, who are now in university, who have been taught how to search by Google. And I think that is an issue, and that's been raised a lot today, that maybe our role is to coach people in better search, not to try and make a better search system, but maybe to help people work with the systems that are there. To finish off, I'd like to say I think it does matter that people do understand what's behind technology, how systems work, how search works, how our personal data is being used, being able to tell the difference between automated and social content, understanding how all this changes the way we think and behave, and maybe there's a need for a new digital critical literacy as well. And the reason I think it matters is so individuals can choose how they engage with this Google world by their own terms. Someone recently said to me, they drive a car, but they don't need to know how the car works to drive a car. I would argue, though, for many people, though, it's still useful to at least know when there's a problem with the car. It can help you not get ripped off by the mechanic. It can help you make good decisions about what kind of car you need to buy for your situation. There's a level, possibly a level of understanding that we all need to go a little bit deeper when it comes to technology. And what our role as educators and librarians is in that is really to stay ahead, a few steps ahead of our clients. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if I could invite all the speakers to come and join me up on the stage, I'd like to introduce Jane Cowell from the State Library of Queensland, the Director of Public and Indigenous Library Services, to act as chair for this session. My colleague Jenny and myself will be running the aisles with a microphone. For the sake of the webcast, please withhold your questions until you have the microphone, because we want to include everyone that's watching remotely as well. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all our speakers and to invite you. I hope you've written your questions or have thought about your questions. It was great to hear from everyone today, and it's good for me as a person who is really in the library industry to hear that no one thought that we didn't have a role in a Google world. Everyone thought that we should be leading the change, and that we are actually positioned to lead the change. So I hope you feel that, and that you feel empowered to lead the change. And the other positive message that I thought was, it's an exciting place to be in this change. So I hope you're as excited as I am from all of the opportunities that actually are ahead. So do I have any hands up? Because I've got heaps of questions if you haven't. Yes, one way up the back.
Hi, I'm looking at it from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander point of view. Though I enjoy technology and I actually like making things accessible, I find that researching on a different method to what most people are used to with Google and that. But what I'm finding is that the books are of relevancy, but nobody's actually looking at that culture as part of the community. I have done over around about 10,000 inquiries, and it's kind of difficult to find information on Google or within the library itself. So I'm just wondering what sort of situations are going to happen to that in the future. What can we look forward to? And you also have to understand also from an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander point of view, getting access to that technology is also a little bit difficult. So we're at a starting point in that process.
Kathryn would like to answer?
Yeah, I think one of the things is it needs to be a joint effort because there's so many protocols of access, cultural protocols that really need to be respected. So I think it needs to be from ground up. I think that's what I was talking about when I was saying we've got a remit to get metadata on stuff, to digitise, to make it out there if it possibly can be remixable, findable, because, I mean, it's very glib to say, but it's often said, and I see it with students, if it's not online, it's invisible. So that would be one of the things. I know that the work that the Northern Territory Libraries was doing with some of the communities, I know that some of it they did, it actually increased skill, but a lot of that information just stayed within the community because that's where it needed to be. And I think that skill plus doing stuff with stuff is where would be a useful place to start.
Well, what I'm finding is mostly that sort of libraries themselves are asking the community to participate and to assist, but they're actually not looking in their own repository. For example, some of the actual information, the books which are, as you stated previously, are being placed to the side because they don't think of value, are actually of quite a lot of value for Indigenous people. And some of the resources, what I'm finding with libraries, especially the larger ones, are that they're not going in their own collection to actually re-evaluate what they've got in there. We're all talking about modern technology and we're talking about sort of like the virtual community and that, but I'm finding it difficult for trying to get to like discussions about what we can do to actually look at a market for the future and actually looking what's in there at the present time. True, we do have some difficulties with access to cultural information, but in all honesty, I think Aboriginal people have always been wanting to give information. They're just not being able to access the information that are currently within the institutions.
Thanks. And can I add something there, only because I was recently at the Atsis Library in Canberra, and they're working really hard on providing skills, you know, sort of within Indigenous communities on accessing those archive material and the material that they have. So they're looking at digitising what they have and then providing access to that and the skills for access to that. And the NASA Library is also part of their strategic direction for all the national, state, Australasian libraries is exactly around access. So what you're talking about there is access to existing collections, and that's exactly what they're focusing on in the next 3 years. So thank you,
Can
Tina.
I just add to that as well? It taps into what Kathryn talks about with focusing on local collections and local data. That's a huge role, I think, for libraries in this Google world. You know, we're responsible for our local knowledge and our local histories, and part of that is what we've already got, and part of it is developing collections as well.
Okay, well, I have a question for Kathryn, and one of the key things that, you know, sort of struck me from Kathryn's talk is around the stop doing. Because one of the things we in any, you know, sort of government, private, you know, sort of library, in any libraries, we always have the, oh, but we've still got 2 customers who use that. But don't forget, we've got the 85-year-old who still uses the audio cassette. We have to have 20,000 audio cassettes for that 85-year-old. So, you know, sort of, and yet she might have Alzheimer's and just want the one, because she forgets each day. So, you know, sort of, so I think in terms of that, we haven't actually asked our customer, but I'd be really interested to know about how do we go about that polite exit and sort of thinking about that, because it's not just about the popular, because remember, oftentimes it's metrics, it's the popular that we keep, but how do we go about that stopping, and whether anyone else on the panel might like to talk about that?
I think that one of the things I've noticed in libraries is that we have a tendency to want to report positive news, and I guess that's because we all work in big bureaucracies where we've all got some kind of performance criteria we're supposed to meet, some KPI or some kind of project we're supposed to be putting in place. And because we want to report positive news, we don't often acknowledge when things have failed or are no longer working well. And so that's why I was talking about the way companies in a Google age will look at failure as feedback rather than failure. They'll try and present it to their customers as this is what people want now. Rather than saying this service is declining in popularity, we should perhaps be saying this service should no longer be delivered in this way, we're going to change it to this. So I think that that's one way that you can exit from something that you're doing that is no longer valuable, is by, instead of presenting it as in a negative light, saying you can say we're learning from what you've said, we're learning from what you're doing, and we're going to change the way we're working by working towards what you want.
And teach that 85-year-old to use an MP3 player.
Thank you.
Or give her those cassettes, for heaven's sake. Are they really that valuable?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. They're the answers I wanted.
But what if the 85-year-old doesn't want to learn how to use an MP3 player, and we shouldn't actually make them do it?
No, but I think the assumption that they don't want to is
surely they've been asked at some point.
Yeah, I think we do. We don't ask though. We assume. I accidentally bought my mum an iPad, and it was an accident because I bought it for myself and didn't know that I had a work one coming. And so I gave her this iPad, and it has completely changed her life and completely changed the way she interacts with technology. If you asked her if she wanted an iPad, she would say, God, no, what will I do with that? But now she's a hardcore tap gamer and does all her... She's a 56-year-old hardcore tap gamer and does all her shopping online. Yep. And has a Kindle and reads on her phone, and, her life has been changed by it. But sometimes we have to show our customers what's possible and then ask them, you're right, Jemima, if they don't want to do it, that's fine.
I mean, you just have to ask, really.
Yeah, just have to ask. We just often don't.
But if the... No, that's right. And
no. That's not true.
Can you just repeat that for people who are playing at home?
Yeah, I just say a 56-year-old is not an 85-year-old, and there comes a point where people just go, no, I do not want to take on another new technology, and that's it. By trying to force them to say, oh, but this will be much better for you, they really just pull down the shutters at that point.
But some people don't ever want to not learn a new technology. I used to run how to use an MP3 player classes in public libraries, and my audience was 70 plus, and they'd come in and ask me how to use it.
I think we need to go back and look at who are our users, who do we want to target for any program, what are we trying to achieve here, and what would we do if we weren't doing this? And they're the three questions that I think we need to ask. And it might be a really hard decision to make, but actually, if you've got somebody and the only reason you're spending all this time maintaining the cassette are for 2 users, and you can't run another program because of that, you might just have to get rid of those cassettes. And there's no graceful, elegant way that's not going to upset that user. We need to put on our big girl panties and just do that sometimes, I think.
Yeah, what's wrong with copping a bit of flack? I worked at the University of Melbourne when they opened a store and took some books off the shelves in the Baillieu Library and put them in the store. First time they'd ever done it. They had to because they couldn't put any more books on the shelves. They literally had no choice. There was a massive uproar in the newspapers down there because all of the older academics in the arts faculty were up in arms because they would no longer be able to browse the shelves and see all the new things. And when the older academics had the reality of the new world pointed out to them, that the new things were not on the shelves anyway, the only things that were on the shelves were the dusty old things, they stopped complaining. So, maybe we just need to be a little less worried about people criticising us. Look what happens to Google all the time. They're constantly criticised by everyone. They don't seem to care.
It's a learning experience.
It is.
Oh, thank you. I've taken a lot of valuable information away, and I will take away and do some reading around this. But I come from a one-person library non-profit organisation servicing 500 people, and I work part-time. And I really love a lot of these ideas, but I'm wondering how I can incorporate some of the ideas in the services that I provide with few resources, funding and physical, and any hints.
Apart from chuck stuff first. So chuck some of the stuff.
They all got lost in the floods, so I'm pretty much rebuilding from scratch.
But some of the things you're doing, I mean, in some ways that's actually an opportunity.
Yes, it's been a great opportunity to actually start introducing digital into the environment. But because of the restrictions of the organisation, some of these technologies they don't even adopt. So I'm just sort of...
Then is there a space for skills? For actually
yes,
empowerment that Kate was talking about.
How do I go about learning those skills, being the age I am, and only just getting onto Facebook? How do I go about picking up those skills when my company can't provide me with the funding to go to workshops, those sorts of things?
Yeah. Can I say just something? Because I'm in the space of training people like yourself.
Yes.
And there's something that refers to the previous question. There's a lot of forking of content at the moment. So there's content in transition from paper format to digital format, and then not just from digital format, now into multiple digital formats. You've got your HTML5, your EPUBs, your different eBooks, and then you've got your online material. And it's becoming very difficult to transition and know when do you cut off the things of old, so you can only manage so many bits of material. And what I always recommend to people like yourself who are starting out is to trial something on a small scale. So don't try and transform your library straight away. Maybe pick one aspect to start playing with and try new things on a small scale. Because you want to weed out the bugs, you want to increase your own skills and confidence. And when you start getting some wins on the board, then go, right, let's roll this new practice or technology across the board. But I was just going to say, start small.
Yeah. Can I just say start personal too?
Yes.
But for me, technology never makes sense in a library context unless it makes sense to you personally. So don't necessarily start with a technology in your workplace. Outside your workplace, do something. For example, I wanted to blog. I wanted to learn how to run websites and get nitty-gritty in the back end. So I set myself up my personal sandpit and did that myself and learnt about blogging by doing it as me, not as me the professional.
Yes, I actually have found that experience because I've just started blogging about a year ago and I've just joined Facebook about a year ago and Twitter is the next thing, but it's funny that you have to do it in a personal space and because you don't have the resources in your workspace to be actually able to learn those skills.
Well, that sucks, but I think it also won't make sense in your workspace until it makes sense to you personally.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Well, I was going to say Twitter because I'm moving myself from Facebook to Twitter and the community in Twitter to help you. And I think maybe if you've lost everything in the floods, think about what you do at work and can you reprioritise what you do?
Yes, yeah, that is
to
part
include.
Of that whole process. Yeah. I did want to ask though, with regard to Facebook, Twitter, and all those Google services, that means that you're relying on your clients to actually sign up to those services. Clients to sign up to those services. So you need to actually somehow communicate with your clients?
Not necessarily. I mean, Facebook's a horrible walled garden, but otherwise there's ways that you can actually create, just using WordPress or something like that, something with a number of little boxes where you pull in your Twitter feed, you pull in all sorts of stuff, you have a library search there.
So you're not asking them to actually log in and provide their details?
No, exactly. Right. And sometimes you can make a gadget where they could reply also, and there's all sorts of stuff. No, always make sure you have a home where all those feeds and all those places are in the single spot. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you.
I was thinking about a community, as in the library community, to support you learning and people in one-person libraries sharing those ideas with them
as well. Yes, we do. We have a group, one-person library group, yeah.
Well, I would suggest you get on Twitter and do a search for the hashtag for this event and follow everyone who tweeted from here.
Yeah, I've written all the sites down. Thank you.
It's fabulous what comes up in Twitter. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, this is something sort of a bit sideways, but this is what I always tell my students. I get them to read an article by Kate Sheehan where she talks about, with Reader's Advisory, you don't read all the books in your library, but there's probably somebody who specialises in murder mystery, and you know that when somebody comes and wants a murder mystery, you ask that person. And with the type of personal learning network you could build up, you don't have to know everything about technology, but you know enough to know that so-and-so specialises in user experience. And so you can actually ask them the user experience question, and as long as you've got your niche and you're giving as much as you're taking, or as much as you can, because people are very supportive, you actually build up a knowing where to go network, not so much your own skills and knowledge. And that's how I think we have to all fly together rather than just...
So you don't have to know everything, you just know how to find it.
And know who.
And apart from Carol on this panel, I don't know, do you have IT training, Francis?
No, self-taught.
Yeah, so I think apart from Carol, we are all cut and paste techies who can find what we need on Google and copy someone else's code and implement it. None of us have IT qualifications.
They do it.
Yeah, and that's what I teach my students how to do. In the technical courses I teach them how to find other people's code and copy it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a quick question about clunky publishers. One of the big issues that libraries do have or face is trying to integrate incredibly clunky products from publishers who aren't moving into the technical world fast enough. We have to deal with some of the big international publishers. They're so far behind. And you're talking about making this stuff easy for the users to do. We're desperately trying to do that. You're paddling madly underneath, trying to get it to look seamless. They're not doing it. And as another part of that is also the local data sets that you were talking about. Yes, we'd love to, but they've just cut funding for the National Libraries project to digitise Australian papers. That's gone. So we all know that there's unique material in our collections. It's just not seen as sexy.
But how many libraries are duplicating exactly the same core
Exactly,
collections
I quite
over and
agree.
over and over and over,
Yeah.
and not focusing on that local stuff? I mean, it may well be a focal shift rather than...
We've had to identify the local material that is held nowhere else, that is sitting in archives, and get that out. But it's not sexy.
And it's not what we've always done, and it's not what we think of when we signed up for this profession. This wasn't what we were going to do.
One of the most important reports we just digitised was the report from the 1973 floods in Queensland. It wasn't digital anywhere. And yet it was one of the most popular and most requested documents.
Can I comment on the clunky interfaces aspect? Our liaison librarian, Emma, I know you're here. She's actually not our liaison librarian anymore, but when we used to get her into our classes, she actually didn't show our students databases. She showed them how to use Google Scholar and get to the content. So why are we messing about with what we're messing about with? Why aren't we just...
Because so much of the content still isn't free.
Yes, but there are ways to access it even via Google Scholar.
If it's available in the public domain and if the academics
No,
have put it
not
there.
even if it's in public domain. No, in deeply
in digital
protected
repositories from
content.
universities.
Yeah,
So I work in a university library and I know that we have a constant problem with the usability of our ebooks, and I buy things on Amazon with one click and I then try to download something from EBL in my library and it's a nightmare. It's absolutely awful. Even somebody with an IT degree can't do it. So what I ask the staff who are responsible for purchasing in my library is, why the hell did we buy this? If you have a budget of $10 million a year to spend on e-journals and e-books, why give it to somebody who hasn't got a clue about user experience and doesn't care what happens to your customers? Why give it to somebody who builds friction into their system?
Carol, that's because that's all there is.
Actually, that's all there is in e-books, but are we in the business of e-books, really? And I think that you need to ask a more fundamental question about whether or not you should be buying that content. And if you should be buying it, is it you and individually, or is
That's
it,
why
like
I'm talking about
Kathryn
consortia.
said, isn't there some kind of role for a consortia here to get an Australia-wide deal, like they do in the UK?
And in Canada.
And in Canada, thank you.
Yes.
So-
Sorry to take you back to that. Was that question about clunky interfaces about local repositories?
No, it was the two separate things. The local repositories...
Because the stuff that is in those locked down databases that you pay billions of dollars for, you can find through Scholar and you can connect to it.
Yes, you can also find
Through
all
your
of the free
library.
content from my digital repository and my open journals that I host for my library service. So I'd like you to consider joining me in making things openly accessible and using your funding to support that publication rather than using it to support the ebook vendors.
I've got written at home, I was writing a paper, and written on my notice board is, do you give your budget to Elsevier or the Internet Archive?
Yep.
And that's actually what we're coming up against, I think. Whose side are we on? Because the publishers just aren't that into us.
But that's been a question for the last 15 years. We've tried to get rid of the academic publishers. You tried to get stuff available free with institutional repositories and put it out there. If the academics can, they do. But there is still so much that, because of the publish or perish, that they have to do in peer review that goes into extremely expensive journals.
Yeah, then it becomes us saying, no, not going to do that.
That's right.
And that's
Most
really hard
libraries
because
have been trying that for the last 15
but just
years.
no, us as academics, sorry, I'm putting my
We
other hat
have
on.
to say, let's publish elsewhere.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, like the LibX toolbars, for example, make the content that's in our databases. I know you guys can't do toolbars, but if you can set up scholar preferences to get you deeply linked into the content you want. We don't need our shitty search interfaces.
Sorry, what was the... If your library...
LibX is free?
LibX is free.
All you need to do is...
No, but it actually will take you to the interface, and then your users know it's there and can request or lobby.
If you install the LibX toolbar or the LibX Chrome extension and then set yourself up as a QUT library user, when you go to the Internet Movie Database, a little ad pops up and tells you that the QUT library has dozens of videos that you might like to consider borrowing, or DVDs. So that free advertising you can get. If you build the toolbar, your users can use it. And I know you're shaking your head because you can't build the toolbar, but surely you've got a computer at home. I do some of my coding on this, for God's sake. You don't need to do your stuff at work.
LibX is wonderful. Look, if you do nothing else, go home, search LibX, have a play, steal somebody else's stuff. Your users go to Amazon. Yeah, your users go to Amazon. It puts an icon of your library on the Amazon work. You can click, and your user can see it's in your library. They don't have to buy it personally.
And if you
just for that,
if you can't do this stuff at work, this is what I'm talking about earlier. We're still fighting in council libraries to get access to bloody Facebook. Why is not every single library manager in this state working together and advocating for a model where we can access this stuff? And it needs to happen in government libraries too.
And LGAQ, everything. And the other thing is, I think we're very good at asking for permission and stopping when they say no, instead of doing it and then asking for forgiveness and standing up with the why. So, admittedly, maybe not in this kind of government environment that we're in, but sort of maybe when it settles down. Are there any other questions? I just have one for Kate, and it's one around her comment around librarians judging and selecting and controlling what is selected in collections. And I just wanted to talk to Kate about how do we move from that controlling of content and controlling of the selection of our collection to a crowdsourced collection where, hey, let's give our community the right to choose.
How do we do that? We need attitude shifts. So we were talking earlier about hiring for attitude, not skills. I think that's a very important point in this. We need to train our customers. We have to empower them to create content in order to be able to get it in. It's no good saying, here's this wiki, you can contribute your local stories. Every kind of service like that needs to be underpinned by programs that help our customers get the skills to do these things. I think it's about defining the right target markets for the services. We have to understand that people's time is valuable and they're not just going to create content because we say they should. The other thing we need to consider is, Kathryn and I went to an unconference for digital humanities in Canberra last year.
Yes.
And all of these digital humanities researchers were sitting there saying, people create their content in Facebook. They put their stuff there. Facebook's becoming this pseudo-archive. This is terrible. How do we get them to put their content in our spaces? And I've got 2 points to make on that. The first one is we don't actually understand how people experience using social media. So if we can't understand what it is about the experience of Facebook that makes people put their content there, then we can't hope to build the kinds of systems that encourage them to put their content in our systems. The other point I want to make is if they're depositing their content in Facebook or Twitter, or say if they're creating content on YouTube or putting images in Flickr, why do we need to make them leave those environments and come to us to deposit the content with us?
Yeah, I think our conclusion was actually what we need to do is lobby something like Facebook. You know, when you join Facebook, you tick the little thing saying advertisers can have access to my content because you can't play otherwise. We actually need to get ourselves defined by Facebook as advertisers and then pull feeds like mad out of Facebook.
Well, not even as
advertisers,
like as, you know, libraries can have my content. Because if you're going to tick advertisers, then you're going to tick libraries. We don't even need to go to that extent, though. Like, even projects around tagging content that already exists in these other spaces so that it's linked in ways that are different to what the person who originally put it there intended. So I think...
Yeah, the other thing is making sure that any archival systems that we build have a button that says, publish this to Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and it actually goes out there, and that's something that the users see happening to their content.
The other thing we have to do is educate around Creative Commons licensing. I know about Creative Commons licensing, yet I haven't set my Flickr default preferences to allow my images to be automatically Creative Commons licensed because I'm lazy. But we have to tell people about those things and let them know that if they use Creative Commons licensing, this stuff can and will end up in collections one day.
Which means changing our permissions forms. Change them so that it's, they understand that it's going to be released under Creative content.
So I think it's understand experience, empower your users, don't necessarily do it in your space, partner with other people. And what was the fourth thing we just said?
Creative Commons.
Creative Commons. Tell them about alternatives to copyright.
Okay, I have a question for Francis because I'm not going to let him go without actually... Francis, I was really impressed by the fact that you do allow that access in Google Docs, that you know, sort of do share your information and your learning. How do we go about... And I'd just like to ask, how many people use Google Docs, put their publications up on Google Docs? It's not very many in the library world. So, you know, sort of how do we go about creating this... Because it would help our single person, you know, sort of librarians too. How do we go about creating this community of sharing learning, accessing learning, and, you know, sort of knowing about this?
Things like cloud storage for documents, being able to share learning material quite easily and freely is, I think that one, there's a culture change that needs to happen. So a lot of, I'm talking mainly working with educators. A lot of educators carry a USB stick around their neck, and that's what makes them a teacher. Is they have their content is on their stick, and no one else can add my PowerPoints because then I won't be a teacher. And I challenge that and say, look, those PowerPoints aren't what make you a teacher. What makes you a teacher is your ability to enthuse people, to inspire people, to look at that content, to understand it, to ask questions about it, maybe to recreate their own content. It's all those other things. It's not actually the content itself. So I think there needs to be a culture change first. I'm not saying everyone should put their stuff up for free, but I'm a believer in open content myself, so I practice that. Everything I give out for free for people to use and reuse. So, but I think it's a bit of a culture change for people because we're so used to organisations saying, well, we made this, and individual teachers and educators, and it might be the same for libraries, saying, well, we created this, therefore, you know, we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we give it out. In fact, it seems to be, though, the people that are giving away things for free online become the thought leaders in that area. In fact, it's not shooting yourself in the foot, it's actually putting yourself, your best self forward and saying, well, I'm going to be the first to freely share my information openly. Understanding how these systems work is just a matter of exposure. Often, I do Google Docs training actually for organisations. Often the first thing I do is I open a Google Doc, I get them all to join, and then we all collaborate on a document together, and you just see the light bulb go on. They go, wow, I didn't realise you could edit documents in real time in a shared space, and suddenly people start talking, this is going to make our job so much easier. Wait till I tell the boss about this, you know, those kind of comments come out. But that shows that it's just a matter of exposure to these things. And like you've been advocating a lot, just play with these things. They're free to play with. Just be aware that, yes, it is true. Anything that's free, you become the product. But I'm happy with that arrangement myself. So yeah, play with Google Docs. It's not just about Google Docs, though. There's many other products, and they will just emerge, and it'll just become mainstream. I think we'll have even Microsoft in their next version of, you know, Office. It'll be a lot more collaborative and open.
Can I just add to that I think it's already fairly mainstream in our industry for people to share their content. And if you want access to people's content, you just need to join Twitter, and we will all tweet links to our presentations as soon as we leave here today. Kathryn's already done it, haven't you?
Yeah, I published it automatically as I was talking. But the thing is that I think it's really important, if you're really serious in this, is getting a URL, which is yourname.com if you possibly can. And then, I mean, I distribute my stuff all over the net, but I always make sure I've got a post that it comes back to, so people have a little search box so that if they know that I was at the State Library of Queensland, they can put in Queensland and up pops the presentation. So it's really important to have that central collect.
Home on the web.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask a question? The link between free information that you can access on the internet and copyright. That's the question that I'm wondering.
More detail, as in?
If we find information via Google Docs or paper written via Google Docs or from a government website, and that information is freely available on the internet, how can we provide that to our staff, or provide access to our staff with that information?
Look, work to do what Europeana does. Are people familiar with Europeana? Because people don't know about Europeana, and it makes me very, very sad. Is the Louvre on Europeana, or is that the only one that isn't? It's the digital repository of museums, art galleries in Europe. I mean, these are the cultural collections, the archives. It's this huge, Europeana.com. But they've actually, last year, they made all their stuff available under, it wasn't even a Creative Commons attribution license. I can't remember at the moment what it is. I think it was just, it wasn't copyleft, but it was just a, you can use this to do whatever you want license. And if Europeana can do it for the greatest thought documents in Europe, I don't see that there's a problem with us actually doing it. It's just that we need to jolly well do it and have the chutzpah to do it.
Sorry, I do some training in digital content and this area, and I think the easiest way to put it to people is I say, first of all, there's a lot of misunderstandings. Just because it's public, don't assume public domain on anything you find. People say, well, I found it on YouTube, therefore they must be happy for me to show this video. Well, it wouldn't be on YouTube, would it? So, but that's not true. Like I said, there's photos of my family on the web. All of us have information on the web. Not all of us would be happy for it to just be used as the next front cover of an e-textbook from University of Queensland. But that's the kind of thing that can happen because people think, well, it's just assumed it's online, therefore anyone can use it. So I think don't assume that. Seek permission where you can. Don't be afraid to email that person and say, I really like this presentation. I'm thinking of using it. Can I get your permission? You'll be surprised. A lot of people will be thrilled that you're actually asking. Seek permission, double check, check again. I'm hearing stories constantly of people getting nasty letters from Getty Images and all these different companies. It is happening in Brisbane. People are getting nasty letters saying, we will sue you because you've used this image inappropriately. It is serious business, copyright. But yeah, seek permission, learn about Creative Commons, don't assume. I'll just say those things. Not to scare you off, I just wanted to say those things.
Yeah, but that's what I did with I had that image of the, oh no, I didn't end up using it. I had an image of a monkey. You know how I had the image of the bird and the things you needed to do. I'd actually digitally manipulated that so that it was a shadow and I'd taken out the background. And one of the images I wanted to use was on Flickr, but it was on a don't change this license. So I actually emailed the user, the author, and said, look, I'd like to use it for this on this date. It's probably going to go up on SlideShare, may I? And if he granted permission, but I wouldn't have used it otherwise. It's horrible to find your own stuff being reused, which has happened to some of us.
I took the opposite path. When I couldn't get all of the logos I wanted for my initial slide as Creative Commons licensed attribution only, I didn't put any logos in at all. So you can be super cautious like me. The only picture I had in my presentation was one of Thomas Edison, Creative Commons licensed from Wikimedia. So you can do that, and you just have to accept that you're not going to be, you're not even going to have a page shot. Or you can investigate each one and make sure you're okay.
And often the rights information is right there.
Yep.
Like when I
On the
upload my
page.
YouTube videos, they're uploaded for, the most general Creative Commons license possible. So if you see that, you can use it.
Okay, I have one last question for Jemima, unless there's anyone from the audience. So I was very interested to learn about the empowering of staff that the University of Sydney Library has done in supporting, University of Technology, has done in supporting staff to actually be out of the library with their stakeholders in all kinds of avenues and counting that as work time. And I wanted to say, it's allowed. Is it actually happening? Are staff taking it up?
It's been allowed for the last 6 months or so. Mal is pushing engagement. I go to a lot of faculty events anyway, and historically have never put that on, didn't really even think about putting it on my timesheet. But Mal has said, yes, you can put that on your timesheet within reason. If it's a whole weekend thing, whatever. But I often go to an opening from 6 till 8, so I go, okay, I was at work till 7 o'clock. Of course, during work hours, if we do that sort of thing, that's just taken for granted that's part of work time. It's about engagement, and he can't stop stressing it, really. He wants us to do more and more and more. We're all very, very busy, as you all are, so we probably don't do as much as we would like to. But the thing that's been driven a lot, and particularly by me, has been to engage with the support units, and that's there's the equivalent of it's called HELPS, Higher Education, Learning and Language and Presentation Skills Group. They're the ones who help with assignments and help students with assignments. So we've forged a very strong relationship with them. They come to the library, they sit and work with students in the library. We've offered to do training for them in their space, but we haven't done that yet, but that's certainly an option. We're working with them now. We're working on rewriting the assignment writing guide, which isn't actually usually a library. It's not part of the library domain, but because we've shown interest and they're very happy for us to help, and we are big. We have the advantage of being big and have much deeper sort of funding resource pockets, even though we don't think they're very deep, compared to the smaller departments across the university. We are. And so it's kind of like a network of people who help students helping each other and we understand what the students are experiencing in a broader way, and we're also engaged with what the staff's needs are, what they're doing, and the fact that you show interest in what they're doing, you have a conversation then around what their research interests are, what they might need, are they having any trouble, are they using that database, so their students, you have this great entree into the world of the student experience and the staff experience that you don't get just by sitting at the research help desk waiting for someone to come up and ask a question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, I'd like you all to give a round of applause to our And once again, from the State Library of Queensland, thank you so much for giving up your time and coming here with us today. Thank you. Thank you.
Just a final wrap up to ask you and encourage you all please to fill out the feedback and evaluation forms for us, because as you'll be aware, that's what makes us able to keep doing what we're doing, because we have to put forward a good argument for continuing these types of forums for you. Other than that, again, a thank you from myself and Jenny for supporting the session that we've organised this morning, so thank you.